thousands and thousands of people across Africa. And as David Miliband said in our first session, it's not it's not extraordinarily difficult to understand this. It's about systems. It's about how you deliver when children are very malnourished, how you try and use our inventiveness to bring them back from the brink of moving through the various different stages of malnutrition, and you do it as quickly as you possibly can. And I believe that agenda today has really had a lift from the expertise and determination that we've seen at this summit, and I hope now we can all go forward and ensure that we really deliver those results. Now, as we come to the final brilliant speakers at this session, I just want to say that the white paper that the Prime Minister launched this morning, a copy will be available for everyone as they leave after the reception following this session. I very much hope that you will take one away with you. I guarantee that if you start to read it, you will not be able to put it down, and that it really will be something you will remember and I hope enjoy reading and be enthused by. Now, the first thing we're going to hear in this session is a pre-record from the former Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon, now, of course, the co-chair of the Centre for Global Citizens. And then after him, we're going to hear from Amina Mohammed.
Distinguished colleagues, it is my pleasure to address you today at the United Kingdom's Global Food Security Summit in London. Firstly, I'd like to extend my gratitude to the governments of the United Kingdom, the United Arab Emirates, and Somalia for co-hosting this timely summit to turn the tide on food insecurity and malnutrition. We are all aware that the worsening effects of climate change are impacting every aspect of our lives everywhere in the world. It's further increasing the threat of violent conflicts, health issues, and food insecurity. Secondly, I welcome the UK's leadership in creating the much-needed links for a thriving food ecosystem, especially in the light of all these challenges we are facing as a global community. It is estimated that almost 600 million people will be chronically undernourished by 2030. Achieving food security by 2030 will therefore be a major challenge, especially when it comes to the inclusion of women and youth in accessing and benefiting from science and innovation. We need to tailor our interventions effectively to reduce inequalities and close the global gender gap in food insecurity. Channeling more funding to agricultural research and development through global networks like CGIAR will accelerate and scale the technologies that can be adopted by smallholder farmers and other vulnerable stakeholders. They urgently need solutions and support to be able to adapt to the worsening effects of climate change and increase their resilience. I'm taking this opportunity to call on global leaders, decision makers, and change makers alike to support research institutes to innovate, develop, and disseminate solutions to make climate-resilient, sustainable food systems a reality. I'm grateful that so many representatives have gathered at this summit, showing their commitment to advancing food security in the framework of climate adaptation and sustainable agriculture. Today's summit has provided pathways to move beyond talk of crisis and towards ideas for actionable solutions. Let us carry this energy and dedication forward to key decision-making moments, including COP28, and continuously renew our commitments. If we really want to tackle the crisis of our today's world, we need to put people, especially the most vulnerable, at the center of our conversations and efforts. I hope today's productive discussions have sparked a new urgency in all of you to work together towards a more sustainable, equitable, and resilient future for all, leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Now, Your Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, please give a very warm welcome to Amina Mohammed, the Deputy Secretary-General, our friend and someone of enormous influence in this sphere. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Andrew. Excellencies, I know lots of them here, lots of distinguished guests, but mostly many, many friends that I can see in the room. And I wish I'd been with you from the beginning, because as I walked in the room, there's so much energy, and that energy, I think, was parallel to what we had in the General Assembly when we had the political declaration and the SDG summit, but also a few months earlier at the food system stocktake, something I think we all remembered vividly, the investments we made in the first food system stocktake coming to bear. So so pleased that we're all here together. So thank you, Andrew, for hosting this timely event, but also to the government of Somalia. And not too long ago in New York, both the President, the Prime Minister, talking very much about not just the conflicts and the pathways to peace, but in parallel, not the day after, but in parallel, how really to secure the food systems, because this for them right up front with the humanitarian crisis that they face, not just in Somalia, but also in the Horn of Africa. Thank you to SIF and to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, because they have stayed the course. This is not a quick fix. This is something we have to go over years, and that needs accompanying, and so thank you for being here with us. As I've heard earlier, the discussions that have been held during the day have shed a lot of light on the harsh reality of nearly 1 billion people across the globe facing severe food insecurity, and also underscoring the importance of malnutrition. And for us, that's about tomorrow, but investing in today, our children. And everyone knows, I think we've all been through the science of it, not taking care of the millions of children that go without proper nutrition is in fact a huge threat to the future. Alarming statistics, and I think at the end of it, perhaps all of us acknowledge how complex a situation this is, because the food systems doesn't sit in a silo, in a vacuum. It is buffeted by many things that happen to us in the world. And today, I think we can safely say we all are cognizant of the pretty big mess that we're in. But I think we all also know, otherwise, that there are the solutions. And those solutions, many have been discussed over the past 2 years, since we've really had food security as a big issue after Russia's invasion of Ukraine. But that we're finding ways now for its sustainability. So the solutions we have, and we have them by region, we have them by country, we have them by locality. Civil society, local farmers, mostly women, have put those on the table. What we need is to find the resources to bring them all to scale, and not to continue with the proof of concept, because I think by now we all know what works. What we need to do is to get it to work, and to get it to work at the local level. The imperatives for why, because I think today I'm certainly stressed by getting the horse to water, but we can't quite get the horse to drink the water. So bringing all of this to leaders who have to take the decisions on the means of implementation to make this happen. And maybe we have to go back to explaining to leaders why. What is the imperative? Clearly, climate is one imperative. It's an existential threat. We will be speaking about that in COP28 again. There will be a global stocktake. It will be incredibly important to address the 3 issues that face us every time we get there: adaptation, mitigation, but of course the financing. And that's one imperative. The other is about our populations. The population that is growing, but is growing with so many left behind. And that in itself gives us cause for concern when we see the conflicts and we look to the root causes, when we see the massive migrations internally and externally. This should give us some concern. But when we also see young people who don't see hope, and so therefore very easy for them to be distracted into many other areas that we would not ordinarily have said that should be their aspiration. And I constantly say, coming from Nigeria and experiencing Boko Haram, they were not born. It was a situation of injustice, exclusion, a lack of a future that brought young people into that space. And once they were there, it was easy to capture them internationally. And before we knew it, Nigeria had an internal issue that had become international. The issues around children, and I know we've spoken about that today, of course, for us, that is at the center of everything we do. And so I think here we've heard certainly how we ought to be addressing that. And in the end, I would say that it is in our interest, individually and collectively, that we have sufficient imperatives to make the call to action that this should be. I hope that what we take out of this room, apart from all the interactions that you've had and the many new partnerships that you must have made and been energized for, but that this must happen at the country level. The food systems are at the country level. They're not in New York, they're not in London, they're not in Paris, they're at the country level where there are millions of women and young people who should have the potential to reach their aspirations. And the food systems, as I have come to know from experts like David Nabarro and many of my colleagues from the World Food Programme, from FAO, from IFAD, that the possibilities are boundless here. And it's a massive ecosystem. And that is why we are pushing at the country level. We offer from the UN our country teams to look at the food systems and transformations, to look at the energy transitions that have to happen for climate, to look at the digital connections, the three of these, food systems, powered and connected. But let's not forget education, because without the right skills, this is not going to happen. And then we have the social protection. We still need the resilience of the poor, of the vulnerable, and here health plays a huge part, and I know that my big brother here, Tedros, is going to tell us all about that and continue to underscore the importance. And all of this is going to need to create jobs. So I hope the call to action for all of us will be one that sees it at the country level, that convinces leaders that they can take decisions that will yield dividends. We have to see that the enormous amounts of money that we're going to need for this, not all from the public sector, but how you leverage it from the private sector and the partnerships that we need, it does pay. It pays, first of all, in our humanity. And then with that comes everything else. Everyone deserves a life of dignity, and we shouldn't leave no one behind. And I'm really just thrilled to be here, to be part of the end, and I will carry the baton that goes to the country teams of the United Nations, and the next bus stop, I think, is COP28. Look forward to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Amina, for that wonderful speech. It now gives me very great pleasure to call Roger Voorhees from the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, one of our co-sponsors for today, to address us. Roger.
Good afternoon. There's been a lot of speeches today and a lot of talk. I'll try and keep it relatively short, but I couldn't really close today without, first of all, thanking Minister Mitchell and the UK government for hosting this summit, along with the government of Somalia and the president of Somalia, who we heard from earlier today. It's been an incredible day of showcasing how much energy there is in addressing the root causes of hunger and malnutrition. The UK has a long history of strong support for the battle to end hunger and malnutrition globally, and the support has made a measurable difference that we heard about today in the lives of 1 million people around the world. But as we also know, that we are not making the kind of progress that we need to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals. And as we have heard from a number of our speakers today, we're not just standing still, we're falling behind. And if we're going to make a difference, we're going to have to redouble our efforts around real system-level reform. Now, we share common goals with many of you, and the Foundation values these partnerships that we've re-energized today. But I think there are three things that in this partnership we need to focus on going forward. The first is around nutrition, especially the decade-long joint research project we've had with the government of the UK on driving transformation to more sustainable, nutritious food systems. The second is agricultural development, particularly our long-standing partnership we have with the UK on livestock and animal health. And finally, an issue deeply linked to both of us and many of us in the room, which is the role of research and development to drive transformation. Sustainable food systems need robust investments in innovation alongside new financing to tackle the climate and food system challenges at scale. The food system is a powerful entry point for nutrition as well, but our current system is not delivering good nutrition to everyone, with significant impacts on health, people, and the climate. Today, our call to action was issued with a nutritious food system, drawing on over a decade of collaboration with the UK on research, and we know what needs to be done to implement this change. So therefore, it's a call to action to all of us to provide a blueprint of us to rally around of how we can scale it. And Amina, thank you for the leadership the UN has done on the Food System Summit. And we know as we go into UAE and to COP28, it will continue there. But I can't leave today without remembering that over 45 million children worldwide suffer from wasting. And yet we know that nutritious diets, essential services, and positive care practices can and should prevent wasting in the first place. The Child Nutrition Fund is an effort to fundamentally transform how we tackle wasting as a global community. I'm very proud of the partnering with the UK, with SIF, with UNICEF, and many other actors in this effort. Next, I want to highlight the development that we think in livestock and animal health and around the announcement of the Center for Veterinary Vaccine Innovation and Manufacturing that address both zoonotic diseases but animal productivity, and we believe lower methane emissions through this. It finally brings me to my last point today. As a foundation, we believe in investment and research is key to unlocking access to the innovations of smallholders need to build that resilience. That's why we provide a significant amount of funding to the CGIAR system for agriculture research centers. The CGIAR system is the foremost source of innovative solutions in food system transformation, helping to build resilience for 500 million smallholder farmers and farming households around the world. And they are aiming to reduce greenhouse emissions from food security by a gigaton per year by 2030. And most importantly, robust research has said that for every dollar that goes into the CGIAR, it returns $10 of economic value. I've been in development a long time. I raised my family in sub-Saharan Africa. There are very few things that generate 10-to-1 return. And we know within that agriculture delivers 2-to-1 over almost every other development outcome. Therefore, I urge us all to not grow weary of the work ahead, but to go together and make real investments that have meaningful difference on the ground. The road ahead is not set. If the global community acts with drive and purpose to support agricultural innovation and better nutrition, the worst consequences of climate change can still be avoided, and a healthier, more equitable food system and a future for everyone is possible. Thank you.
So thank you, Roger, very much indeed for those remarks. I now have the greatest possible pleasure in calling Dr. Tedros, the head of the WHO, a friend of many of us who does incredible work against an extraordinarily difficult background. Tedros, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you, Andy. That's his name. No, thank you. First, I thank once again the UK for its leadership, and especially Andy for bringing us together in this historic building. And I would also like to thank the co-hosts, Somalia. Really appreciate the President's commitment, and of course the Deputy Prime Minister. And the President's presence here in person means a lot and shows his commitment. So, Mahasantai, Mr. President, through the Deputy Prime Minister. And then my thanks also to Gates Foundation, to UAE, and also to Chris, Children's Fund. As we meet in comfort and security, none of us are worried about where our next meal will come from. None of us are worried about feeding our own children. And yet, right now, that's the reality for millions of children and parents in our world. As others have said, it's not just about having enough food. It's about having access to safe, nutritious, and affordable food. Conflicts have disrupted supply chains and made food a weapon of war. As we speak, women and children in Gaza and in other conflicts are suffering from not having access to food and water. An even worse humanitarian disaster will unfold in Gaza if the conflict does not stop and humanitarian aid is delivered in much greater volumes. The COVID-19 pandemic exposed the vulnerability of food systems, and climate change is destroying crops and making agriculture livelihoods unreliable for hundreds of millions of people. Food systems are also part of the problem by contributing to carbon emissions and putting pressure on our planet. These overlapping crises demand change in the way we produce, distribute, and consume food. Shifting towards more plant-based and sustainable diets can reduce the impact on the environment and mitigate climate change. At COP27 in Cairo last year, the government of Egypt, in collaboration with WHO and other partners, launched the initiative on climate change and nutrition. Nutrition will again be on the agenda as part of the dedicated day on health at COP28 in the UAE next month. I also commend the UK's commitment to tackling climate change, environmental damage, and biodiversity loss in its new strategy for international development. Climate change is a key priority for WHO, and we are committed to supporting countries to build more climate resilient and climate-friendly health systems. Even as we address the upstream drivers of food insecurity, we also need to improve our capacity to deal with the downstream burden of malnutrition in health systems. The political declaration on universal health coverage adopted by the UN General Assembly this year recognized that food security, food safety, adequate nutrition, and sustainable, resilient, and diverse food systems are essential for promoting healthier populations. It calls for the implementation of essential nutrition actions. However, in low and middle-income countries, access to essential nutrition interventions lags far behind other essential health services. For example, while half of children with diarrhea receive life-saving and inexpensive oral rehydration therapy, less than 1 in 6 receive zinc supplements which help with recovery and growth. And while 2/3 of pregnant women have access to essential care, only half of them receive iron and folic acid supplements. It's essential, therefore, that countries integrate these essential life-saving nutrition interventions as part of their journey towards universal health coverage. That will require strengthening the health workforce with a sufficient number of nutrition professionals and integrating it into the primary health care. Globally, on average, there are only 2 trained nutrition professionals per 100,000 population, while at least 10 are needed. This is a problem across the world, and only 23 countries are able to meet this WHO standard. Investment in direct nutrition interventions must also be increased. In the 48 countries for which we have data, average government expenditure and donor investment on nutrition is much lower than for other areas of health spending. And yet, for each dollar invested, there is an estimated return of $16. I commend the government of Pakistan for having announced today their investment in eliminating malnutrition in all its forms and to reduce the proportion of children suffering from wasting. I commend the 23 countries who have committed to implement the Global Action Plan on wasting. Honorable Ministers, dear colleagues and friends, let me leave you with 3 requests. First, we must strengthen services. We urge countries to integrate service for nutrition into health services as part of their journey towards universal health coverage. Second, we must strengthen support. We urge donors to invest in supporting the countries that need it most. And third, we must transform food systems. All of us together have a role to play in changing the way food is produced, distributed, and consumed to prevent disease and promote healthier populations, societies, and economies, and to protect our planet. My thanks once again to the UK for your leadership on this issue. WHO remains committed to working with all of you to strengthen services, strengthen support, and transform systems to make food what it should be, a source of help. Thank you very much. And Andy, back to you.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, can I encourage you to reach for your headsets? And thank you so very much, Tedros, for that wonderful speech. And we're now going to hear from the Brazilian minister with a title as a minister that many of us would envy. He's the Minister for Social Development and the Fight Against Hunger from Brazil. So I welcome Minister Wellington Dias to the stage and look forward very much indeed to what he has to say.
Muito boa tarde. Com muita alegria, eu cumprimento, em primeiro lugar, todos os participantes deste evento, agradecendo aqui ao primeiro-ministro do Reino Unido, Rishi Sunak, e em nome aqui dos ministros Andrew, Michel, e também o esperado ministro aqui ainda hoje, David Cameron, Agradeço também a todos que organizaram este evento, em nome aqui do presidente e o ministro da Somália, a representação dos Emirados Árabes Unidos e também as entidades aqui em nome do senhor Roger Walker pela Fundação Bill e Melinda Gates. Eu quero com muita satisfação saudar aqui também a secretária-geral adjunta das Nações Unidas, a nossa querida Amina Mohammed, e também da mesma forma o senhor diretor-geral da OMS, o Dr. Tedros Adhanom, em nome dele e dela, saudar aqui cada um dos membros de organizações da ONU. Senhoras e senhores, felicito o governo do Reino Unido, da Somália e dos Emirados Árabes Unidos pela iniciativa tão oportuna de reunir aqui tantas e tão relevantes lideranças mundiais para tratar de como melhor enfrentar o flagelo da fome. As conversas e trocas de hoje renovaram minhas esperanças ao mostrar que todos aqui compartilhamos do mesmo sentido de urgência e que estamos, governos, empresas, organizações internacionais, cientistas, cada qual em seu domínio, trabalhando em múltiplas soluções promissoras. Ainda bem que há esperança, porque a situação é grave. Não preciso repetir o que tantos e tantas hoje já dissemos sobre a atual realidade de múltiplas crises que fez crescer novamente a fome, a insegurança alimentar e a pobreza, com números que nos envergonham como civilização. Muitos de nossos países precisam também lidar com crises e turbulências políticas. São sintomas de um mal-estar social legítimo, mas que, em alguns casos, pode ser canalizado para projetos equivocados e manipuladores. O Brasil não é uma exceção. Nos últimos anos, vivemos um importante retrocesso político que comprometeu políticas e programas sociais estabelecidos, extinguiu canais de participação social na formulação de políticas públicas e debilitou sistemas e rede de proteção social, desvirtuando os seus propósitos e colocando-os a serviço de fins eleitoreiros. Chegou a colocar em risco a própria democracia brasileira. Esse projeto, como sabem, não prevaleceu e a democracia brasileira triunfou. A população, porém, não escapou incólume, sobretudo a mais pobre e desfavorecida. Eu não poderia deixar de recordar para aqui no Reino Unido, em especial aqui o chanceler Cameron, que 11 anos atrás, quando era primeiro-ministro, sediou aqui em Londres uma cúpula global contra a fome. Em parceria com o Brasil, e ao passar o bastão das Olimpíadas para o meu país. Na época, o Brasil já estava perto de vencer a fome, o que finalmente ocorreria 2 anos depois, em 2014, quando o Brasil saiu do mapa da fome das Nações Unidas. E passamos para compartilhar nossa experiência com o mundo. Infelizmente, hoje sou obrigado a dizer que o Brasil, na esteira da pandemia e, sobretudo, de uma administração equivocada e destrutiva, retornou ao mapa da fome, com prevalência de desnutrição chegando a perto de 5% da população, a insegurança alimentar grave chegando a 10% e com retrocesso nos principais indicadores de pobreza e pobreza extrema. Infelizmente, ao assumir em janeiro deste ano o mandato de presidente da República, retornando ao governo pela vontade do povo, o presidente Lula precisou assumir de novo o compromisso de acabar com a fome no país. Um compromisso que iremos cumprir com resultados positivos até o final deste governo. Estamos trabalhando dia e noite, reconstruindo e renovando programas e retomando pactos sociais. Não à toa, nosso lema de governo é união e reconstrução. Conto essa história sobre o Brasil para salientar a vocês a importância de uma boa implementação de políticas públicas contra a fome e a pobreza. Quando tínhamos uma boa gama de programas interligados e com participação e controle social, logramos vencer a fome. Quando esses programas foram desvirtuados, eliminados ou deteriorados, a fome voltou. O que falta para acabar com a fome e a pobreza? Já temos as nossas metas, o Objetivo de Desenvolvimento Sustentável 1 e 2. Temos também mais experiência de políticas e programas de redução da pobreza, reconstrução e segurança alimentar e nutricional em muitos países nos ensinaram o que funciona de forma mais eficiente e eficaz. Por que, então, estamos ficando para trás? A resposta está na desigualdade. Muitos países têm vontade, mas carecem dos recursos e da experiência concreta e detalhada de implementação. Outros aprenderam muito na implementação e estão dispostos a compartilhar sua experiência, mas também não têm os mesmos meios para fazê-lo em escala. Pensando nisso, o presidente Lula anunciou a criação de uma força-tarefa especial no G20, cuja missão será forjada numa nova aliança global contra a fome e a pobreza. Não queremos criar um novo foro internacional, pois já temos muitos. A aliança será um mecanismo para angariar recursos financeiros, conhecimento, onde são mais abundantes e canalizá-los para onde são mais necessários, apoiando a implementação e a ampliação em escala de ações, políticas e programas de nível nacional, incluindo nas 4 áreas destacadas pela cúpula global de hoje: crianças, ciência, prevenção e sistemas alimentares, embora sempre com prioridade e foco nos mais pobres. Uma vez debatida e pactuada a partir do processo do G20, a aliança será de todos os países que a ela resolverem aderir, não apenas os que compõem o G20. A missão é clara: ampliar a adoção de bem-sucedidos programas nacionais em grande escala para acabar com a fome e a pobreza, para cumprir, senhora Amina Mohammed, com os ODS 1 e 2. Assim como foi em 2012, ministro André Michel e também o ministro Cameron, que eu sei que nos escuta, ali, com as Olimpíadas, aceitamos hoje novamente o desafio de levar adiante ao Brasil a chama da esperança, que foi acesa aqui em Londres. O Brasil pretende constituir essa força-tarefa especial em sua presidência do G20, com a missão de forjar, em conjunto, essa aliança global. Lanço desde já o nosso convite para que trabalhemos juntos para estes resultados. O presidente Lula autorizou-me a anunciar aqui: o Brasil está de mãos dadas com os países aqui presentes e outros que queiram a prioridade para a segurança alimentar, a redução da pobreza, para mais igualdade. Contem com o Brasil.
Obrigado, and thank you so very much indeed for those remarks. Now, I think I'm shortly going to be able to introduce the Foreign Secretary to close this brilliant day. But before I do so, I hope that you will allow me to make an announcement about the fantastic refreshments which will be provided for our closing reception by the World Food Programme chef advocate Arthur Potts Dawson. His recipes are focused on seasonal local ingredients that recognise the balance of air, soil, carbon, water, energy and health that underpin our food system. It is a zero-waste menu, even transported here by electric vehicle. As we know, loss and waste are significant factors in food insecurity, so let me thank Arthur, who is in the kitchen, for his efforts. Now, I think we have the Foreign Secretary here, my friend, colleague and boss, newly ennobled, former Prime Minister, now our Foreign Secretary, about to attend his first major event in office and speak to close what has been a really important and valuable day. Foreign Secretary.
Well, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you, Andrew. A week into my new job, and I'm delighted that this is my first speaking engagement because it's an issue that really matters. And thank you to Andrew Mitchell for bringing today together, for bringing us here. Thank you to the Somali President, who I met with this morning, for his attendance today. Thank you to the UAE, our friends in the Emirates, for being our co-hosts. And an apology, I was meant to be teaching a course in Abu Dhabi at New York University in January, and I've had to cancel that because of my new role, but I was very much looking forward to another stay in your remarkable country. And of course, thank you to the Children's Fund Foundation and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation for their support. It is so good to be back working with you again on these sorts of issues that matter so much. This government has a proud record on development. I'm proud of what we did on development, and I'm determined that we put development right back at the heart of our Foreign and Commonwealth and Development Office. It is so important. Now, you've had a long day with lots of speeches. I've had an extraordinary day going to the House of Lords and doing all the right things and nodding and saying the oath and all the rest of it, so I can go home and tell Mrs. Cameron she's now Lady Cameron. She's absolutely furious about that, but nonetheless, that's what happened to me today. But you've had a long day. You've had lots of speeches. So I just want to make 4 simple points. The first is what you've been doing today and talking about today, food security, really matters. I believe in all of the Sustainable Development Goals. Indeed, I was part of the committee that helped do the original work on drawing them up. They're all important. I care about all of them. But food is foundational to all aspects of development. Without secure access to a nutritious diet, nothing can be achieved. And malnourished children can never fully develop their bodies and their minds, and it robs them of their futures, and it robs their societies of their potential. And the number of people facing acute food insecurity is the highest that it has been in years. And this is just the tip of what I've called a silent crisis, with 1/3 of the world unable to afford a healthy diet. So I promise you this today, the UK will continue to lead efforts like this. Now, it's great to speak after Minister Dias from Brazil as they take on the G20 presidency. As Prime Minister, I hosted with Brazil summits on hunger and nutrition for growth in 2012 and in 2013. Together, we galvanized global action. It was more money invested in better outcomes, and that's what's needed again. Second point, this is an absolutely critical moment, not just because this silent crisis is growing, but because we cannot separate it from other global crises. Putin's illegal invasion brought this home, as he deliberately sought to rob us of one of the world's great breadbaskets. His cynicism was plain for all to see. He obstructed the Black Sea Grain Initiative. He then walked away from it. He then tried to destroy the very supplies that the world needs. But I saw for myself in Ukraine, in the port of Odessa, there is good news. Ukraine is pushing Russia back in the Black Sea, and with the new Unity facility between UK insurance brokers and the government in Kiev, shipping insurance for their food exports is affordable once more. So let the message go out. Ships are sailing, grain is being exported, Ukraine will continue to help feed us all. Third point, there is a vital link between food security and development on the one hand, and the problem of state fragility and conflict on the other. Of course, farmers can farm, traders can trade, but without the rule of law, without property and land rights, without peace, without trusted institutions, you cannot get your product to market. And that's why it is time to change the way we do development. And that is what Andrew Mitchell's excellent white paper published today is all about. It captures how Britain will help to do this in the future. No more top-down targets that set up fragile states to fail. Instead, working with them to make sure we back their priorities, help them deliver, help them to tell the story to their people about what they're doing to bring their countries to security and prosperity. We will work as partners on strategies and plans which developing countries can own and deliver. We will push to unlock the full potential of development finance. I want us to watch as all those all those multilateral development banks look at their balance sheets, work out how much more they can lend, and we work with them to get that money into development, into the poorest countries, helping the poorest people. Finally, my fourth point, a note of optimism. We can tackle this problem. With innovation and technology, we are capable of feeding all the people on our planet. It can be done. We have the technology. We must bring it to bear. The Soviet writer, Ilya Ehrenberg, wrote of the victims of the Holodomor in Ukraine. Not one of them was guilty of anything. And what was true then is true now. Today, we've heard from the experts. We've heard about the tools. We've seen the commitment we need to realize zero hunger. And I can tell you this, as we do so, the United Kingdom, the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office will be with you every step of the way. Thank you.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I thank the Foreign Secretary very much indeed for his inspiring words. That completes today. May I now invite you to join us downstairs for our final reception with food from farmer pots. Thank you very much indeed.